Hey guys, James here with Waterford Business Solutions, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the biggest issue, the biggest problem that I generally find in QuickBooks Online that causes other people issues and ultimately causes a ton of cleanup work and or people to stop using QuickBooks. That's going to be this banking page. The transactions on this left-hand bar or banking depends on how your account is set up as to what it's called. But this is the page where you can link your bank account directly to QuickBooks so that you can see transactions in real time the day after they occur and add them to QuickBooks and review everything going on. This page is great because it helps you make sure everything is in there, and it basically acts as a pre-reconciliation page. But at the same time, due to misunderstandings of how this page works, along with improper training and use of the page, it causes a ton of issues in QuickBooks. And we're going to go ahead and go over a lot of those today. We're going to hit on some of the high points that I normally see, and we're also going to go over some basics about what this page is and what it does. So first and foremost, basics of what this page is and what it does. This page, all it does is it brings in and it shows you, according to your bank, what happened in your bank account, and it updates generally every night somewhere between midnight and 5 a.m. in the morning. You can always come in and auto update it. This account isn't linked to any bank account, so I can't do an auto update here, but it will automatically do it in the middle of the night. You can just force an update more often. But whenever you see stuff here, this stuff doesn't physically exist in QuickBooks. Even though this is a page in QuickBooks and it's showing you transactions in QuickBooks, all this is a review page. A review page that you can go in and you can mess around with stuff and you can set stuff up. Until you actually come over here and you select an action over here, nothing exists in QuickBooks. Everything is only in this screen here, and if you exclude it, it never appears in QuickBooks. It never shows on your profit and loss or your balance sheet. If you add it though, it will, but if you do nothing with it, it won't show up on the profit and loss. So that's the first big confusion factor that we run into a lot of times. The second one that we run into is going to be how this page works. Again, since this page is not actual stuff in QuickBooks, if you add something and it's already in QuickBooks, it's going to duplicate that transaction. So I hear all the time, and I see all the time, I do probably 1 to 2 consultations a week with this problem where people end up duplicating their sales or duplicating expenses, and they get all upset because it's not working correctly because they don't understand how this page works. The way that this page works is it uses algorithms to basically take a look at what is in your account and say, okay, within a month of this date, so within a month of November 2018, we have a $7.35 transaction that's in here. If it finds that transaction, it's going to prompt you to match it. However, let's say that this transaction hits you for $7.35, but you recorded it for $7.34. It's not going to find a match. It's not going to find that match because it's not an exact match, which means you're going to have to find it. So I'm going to take a few minutes, set up a few examples, and I will be right back. Okay guys, I'm back, and I've set up a few examples for these top 3 transactions here, which is going to show you how everything works. Now, all 3 of these transactions I've now entered. However, you see how we only have a match on this one transaction line here because the dates are close. They actually match exactly, but they're close, and the amounts match exactly. Now, if we even come back here and let's take a look and modify this transaction that I did here to a close date, so that way they're not exact, we're going to come back and do it on November 1st and save and close that. Again, since the date is close, it's still going to find a match. So we're perfectly good there. As long as we know that this matches, we're good. But one thing that this can cause is, okay, well, it might find this record for the exact amount, but it might try to match it with the wrong date. So if we have the same exact thing going on closer to this date, we want to be careful and we want to make sure that we match to the correct expense, the correct transaction. Now, I know that this is because I did a failure of entry. So I'm just going to go ahead and match that. However, what we're going to run into here is these two should also have matches. So let's take a look at Walmart and see why it's not finding a match. When you click on this, even if it doesn't find a match, you can force it to find a match, and it's going to do its best to find one. And right here, when I do it, we find one. Right here, when I do it, we find one. And when we find one, we can select this transaction, and when we select that transaction, it tells us that there's a 32-cent difference. Now, as you can see, my date is a little bit off here. It's on 12/31 instead of 12/28, but that shouldn't make a deal. But what does matter is this 36 cents. It's actually for 68 cents, not for 36 cents. So we've got an issue there with this expense being recorded correctly. Now, we can either resolve the difference and we can enter a new expense, or we can correct this expense, which is what we honestly want to do. So we're going to X out of this. We're going to come back and we're going to correct this expense. And even if it is a penny off, it's not going to find that match. So always keep that in mind. Now that we've done that, now it finds a match. The other thing to keep in mind is even if it is a perfect match, this does not always find it. So this one here, this should have a match. I know that I put the expense in here, so we're going to find a match. When we do that, it says we can't find anything. Well, I know I put it in there. So if I add this again, now I'm going to have a duplicate expense. So I want to come back to my expenses, and I want to go ahead and find that iTunes. And what we see right here is that it was put in for 2019 instead of 2018. That is not close. And since it isn't close, it's not going to find that match. So we're going to move that closer, and now it finds that match. It's all about preciseness here. So in saying that, with this page, what you always need to remember and what you always need to keep in mind is if you have entered a transaction, you have to match it. So that's going to go into this column here. Now, this isn't a perfect example account because I don't have many received transactions on this account here. However, if you are using any type of system to make sales and those sales are recorded in QuickBooks, i.e. you're using a third-party application like ServiceTitan, like House Call Pro, like Jobber, if you're using QuickBooks to send your invoices and receive payments, any type of application that you are doing an invoice and the invoice is going over to QuickBooks, you're receiving a payment and that payment is being sent over to QuickBooks, and you are doing a bank deposit, you need to make sure that everything in this received column always matches. If it doesn't, then you are going to end up with duplicate income and double transactions. This duplicate income and the double transactions that happen here is going to show that you made more sales than you did, because when you record an invoice, when we do a new invoice in here, even if it's not directly through QuickBooks, even if House Call Pro or Jobber or ServiceTitan is pushing it in, it's going to go ahead and record that invoice in here and record the sale in here. When you record that payment, it's going to record the payment in there. And that payment is going to end up either in your bank feed or in your bank deposit area. So we always want to make sure that we are creating our bank deposits. That's one of the cardinal rules of QuickBooks, is to create your bank deposits as they go into the bank. Because if you create them as they go in the bank for the exact amount and for the correct date, then they're always going to match here. If you are skipping that step and they aren't matching, then you are going to be duplicating your income and you're going to be showing the incorrect amount of income. That can lead to expensive cleanup and something that you don't want to do. The other thing is, as I said and as you saw, it's very precise in what it needs to be. Even a penny off will screw the system up and it won't find a match. If the date is way off, it will screw the system up and it won't find a match. So you have to be very cautious. Otherwise, you can end up with a non-match field here. So my rule of thumb is anytime you have money in this received column, you need to make sure that it matches. And if it doesn't prompt you for a match, you need to find the match. If you can't find the match, you need to go through QuickBooks and find it yourself. This will save you a ton of trouble and a ton of issues trying to solve mundane, small, weird issues going on in the system, as long as you're doing this. These cleanups can be thousands of dollars. I saw the other day someone paid over $3,000 to get their system cleaned up. I have people that they use it like this for 2-3 years and it costs them thousands of dollars. Even if we don't clean up, then we're going to have so many issues in the books that we have to basically start from scratch, and you can potentially be filing incorrectly on your taxes, which we do not want at all. Your income makes up a huge portion of your taxes, and if you are double reporting your income, you could be double paying on your taxes, which we don't want to do. Same thing goes for some of these expenses here. If you write checks, if you pay bills, anything like that that you record in QuickBooks, i.e. you write your check and you print it out of QuickBooks, or you record your bills and pay your bills through QuickBooks, or you're using a third-party application like Bill.com to pay your bills, then you want to make sure that you are matching. But the biggest thing that screws most people up is this received funds column, where they do not make sure everything matches. Now, the only time that you can ignore that rule of thumb, and this is a very, very seldom time to do it, is if you received a insurance payment that was from your personal insurance, or you received a infusion of funds because you got a loan or something like that. Even then, it's best to record it by hand and then match, but that's about the only time that you can even consider not matching. The reason for that is we don't want to double record income. I would say at least half of people who have issues with QuickBooks and any type of third-party integration, this is the issue. And it's such a simple solution to fix. It's something so simple to work with, but most people don't take the time to understand it. Now, this is not a deep dive into it. This is a very, very rudimentary look at it and how the bank feed works, along with some key tips and tricks. So as a highlight here, for key tips and tricks, anytime you have money in the received column, make sure that you match that money, that you already have that transaction in there, because more than likely you have your invoice in there already, your payment in there, and if you don't make sure that you match it, you're either going to have double transactions on your bank statement and on your banking register in QuickBooks, or you're going to have more transactions in undeposited funds than what actually exists there. In your expenses, any checks, any bills, anything that you kind of have a paper trail for, make sure that you record it and you match it. Set up a standard that works for you. Generally, my thing is bills, checks, and any type of income are all put in by hand and then matched because it simplifies everything. You can make them put everything in by hand. If you're using the receipts feature, you're going to want to basically match everything. That's getting into some nitty-gritty there. I'm not really going to dive into that. But the key 3 things there is bills, checks, and any type of income, any invoices, any payments, any bank deposits should always match. If you've got questions or if this is something that is plaguing your company, please feel free to give me a call at Waterford Business Solutions, 229-584-8793, or feel free to shoot us an email at info@waterfordbusiness.com, and we will be happy to help you out and help solve any issues that we can. Have a wonderful day.